Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building. She's a licensed therapist, a relationship expert, and a New York Times best-selling author. Nedra, how do I pronounce your last name? I don't want to mess it up.
It's Nedra Tawwab.
Nedra Tawwab.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good morning, Nedra.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me tell you something. Nedra has blessed my life because you came on the God's Honest Truth last year. Mm-hmm. And I knew going into 2022 that I wanted to set boundaries, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so I read your book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself. And now I have learned to set boundaries. I started to say cut people off, but I know that's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But I've learned how to set boundaries.
Yes.
So thank you for writing this book.
What is the difference between setting boundaries and cutting people off?
Cutting people off can be a boundary, but it is not the only way to have boundaries. It is also you need to wear a mask until you come into this room. Mm-hmm. It is also be back here at 9 p.m. There are so many ways to set boundaries, not just cutting folks off.
But if you are setting a boundary for something, or that means for whatever reason that person is not being a positive force, a positive energy in your life, correct? Isn't it easy just to be like, I just don't fuck with you no more?
It doesn't mean they're not being positive. Maybe they're doing things to make you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're doing things that don't make you feel safe and you just want to change it. You may not want to end the relationship. Most people don't want to end bad relationships. They want to repair them. So how do you repair them? You put boundaries into the relationship. You ask people to do different things. You tell them what you need and want, and that's how you're able to repair without cutting off. Now, you may want to cut people off, but there are a lot of things we can do before that.
That's one of the things I heard you say that really helped me. It's like if you really do appreciate the relationship and do value the relationship, you'll set those boundaries, not because you're trying to push somebody away, but because you are trying to keep them there. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one of the things I heard you say. I'm paraphrasing, of course, that really helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think boundaries does give the impression that it is cutting people off. But as a therapist, most people come to therapy wanting to repair their relationships, not cut their mother off, cut their father off. They're like, how can I change my mom? How can I make her better? And we start to talk about, okay, so you need to do these things. These things are boundaries. And that's how you repair the relationship. You can't make this person change, but you certainly can change how you view the issue. You can make requests and hope that they do it. But ultimately, a lot of the boundaries are going to be on you.
Why are boundaries important? Why are setting boundaries important?
It helps you have the sort of relationships that you want. In most relationships, we already have them. We're just unaware. Sometimes the boundaries are unhealthy. Mm-hmm. But we have boundaries in the relationship. The boundaries help you decide, like, is this a relationship I want to be in, or is this a relationship that I need to leave? Often we think people have to be different. How do I get this person to be different when it is us? How do we ask for what we need, which is really hard. You know, it takes some time to be vulnerable and to say to people, hey, when we're talking and you start getting a little elevated, that triggers me. Mm-hmm. Can you keep it down some? Or when you start to yell, I will take a break.
Mm-hmm. Major, I was going to ask you, what got you into therapy? What got you wanted to say, hey, I want to be a therapist? When you were in college, what drove you to that direction?
So I started college as a huge fan of Law and Order, and I thought, gosh, I'm gonna go into criminal justice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I tried criminal justice. I didn't like it much, and I switched around a little bit and graduated with a degree in sociology and African American studies. And for grad school, I was thinking, I really want to work with people. Mm-hmm. And I decided social work. Okay. That's a beautiful way to work with people. After a few internships, I had the opportunity to be a therapist. Mm-hmm. And that first session that I had with a client is what sealed the deal of this is what I'm supposed to do. Like the magic that happened in that space, like seeing somebody open up and share, it was like, oh, wow, all of this talking I've been doing and listening, like this is this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So I would say it discovered me because I was just trying to do different things. And in the process, I discovered that this is what I should be doing. This is the thing that feels the most natural and it feels really good. So therapy, and I've never had a different job since.
You schooled me this morning. I walked in. I said, "Doctor." You was like, "I'm not a doctor. I'm a licensed therapist." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know the difference."
And I was going to ask, they always say that, we need more black people to be therapists.
Mm-hmm.
To be a therapist, it seems like you need a lot of patience. Is that true?
I don't know. I
but there's one when somebody's telling you this situation, you'd be like, all right, hurry up, speed it up. I mean,
I would hope not.
With my friends.
With your friends, right.
My friends would not. They probably are like, who you been talking to? So I'm like, girl, go. I think that therapists are humans, and as humans, we are different part of ourselves in different settings, right? So as a therapist, I can listen to you talk about the same issue every week. With a friend, I may say, listen, this is the 8th time that you brought up this issue.
Right.
Have you thought about therapy?
Right. And does a therapist see a therapist?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Not all. I have met some therapists who do not. I absolutely go to therapy not to talk about my clients, but to talk about all of the stuff that's happening with me. Like, I have relationships that I need to work through. I have exciting things and things that aren't exciting that I need to process. So therapy for me is important. I can't imagine asking people to be vulnerable and to share, and I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. And when people are talking about certain things, it can be very triggering. Like, your stuff comes up. Like, if you have issues with your parents, it will come up in that session. I remember my dog died, and the next day my client come in crying about her dog dying, and I was like, okay, I gotta talk to my therapist today. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I was already sad, but watching her be sad too, it was like, oh my gosh, like, I have a lot of stuff to process.
I don't think I could go to a therapist who didn't see a therapist.
Really?
I couldn't either. Yeah.
And the last question I have is, we talk about people understanding us. Do you feel like, as a black woman, you have to speak to a black therapist? Or do you feel like other people will understand me? Like, would you go see an Asian therapist or a white therapist? Or do you feel like a black therapist will understand you more? Why you do the things that you do, the way we grew up, the way we are, the way that our parents are?
It depends. It depends on your issue. If you're having, I work with a lot of professionals. So if you're having racial issues in the workplace, perhaps going to a black therapist could be helpful. If you are having family issues, you want to make sure that the therapist that you're seeing has some training in working with family dysfunction, working with children of alcoholics, like all of these sort of things. So race can be important for being able to connect, but it's also important to make sure that you're seeing a therapist who can help you with your particular issue, because you don't want to go to someone who's Black, but they help people with schizophrenia. Like, that won't be helpful for you if you have anxiety. So making sure that it's a good match all around is really important.
I saw you say on Good Morning America that the process of finding a good therapist is like speed dating. But some folks feel like finding a good therapist takes forever and it's a slow process. So why do you feel like it's like speed dating?
You may have to try a few folks. Mm-hmm. We want to find the first person and just stick with that person. And sometimes we need to switch because things are no longer working, or you may find that you have some issues that aren't being addressed properly. So you may have to try out new therapists. But I would say, as you're starting, have some conversations, not even a session, but just some conversations to see how comfortable you are with the person, if they could work in a way that fits your personality. There are all types of therapists. Some of us are fairly direct. Some of us will just sit there and say, So you want to make sure you're talking to someone who speaks in a way that works for you.
What do you think the best type of therapist is? The person who sits there and just listens and lets you vent and unpack, or the person who actually gives advice?
I am a different type of therapist with different people. I find that some people don't like advice, and sometimes people do. I can say something like, wow, it really sounds like you're sabotaging there. And some clients will say, no, I'm not. And some will say, you're right. And so for the clients who say, no, I'm not, I take that as a cue. You know what? I can't be direct with this person. So I do need to listen a little bit more. So it really depends on the person, not necessarily the technique. I happen to like a therapist who says, because I'm a therapist. I already know what I need to do. I just want you to listen. So I need someone to listen and every once in a while jump in with a little tidbit. But there are some of us who really benefit from just being heard, and that is enough. I have clients who will talk for 50 minutes, and at the very end, they will say, you didn't get a chance to say anything. And I'm like, but you were going. you had a week. I was letting you, get your stuff off. And I said, it sounds like you have a really good understanding of what's happening. Do you need anything from me? I may not always need to tell you stuff. Some people already know.
What's the biggest thing you see right now? I don't want to call it a problem, but the biggest conversation that you're having, whether it's COVID, whether it's people dying, whether it's people scared or anxiety, what is the biggest conversation that you're having as a therapist right now?
I would say it's a lot of the conversations that I've always had, just normalizing being a human being. So many people think that what we're doing, what we're feeling is abnormal. Even when it comes to the pandemic, people are like, oh my gosh, like I'm just so fatigued. Yes, that's it. How do you know? I just talked to someone who was also, so I'm constantly saying like, this is normal. You're okay. Your coworker should annoy you. Like all of these things make sense. So no.
He annoys me. That's why I looked at him.
It happens, right? Like we're human and we experience these things. And so often we're trying to like, why am I so bothered? It's like people bother us, our partners, our friends. It's not a bad thing. And we need more information around stuff being normal and not feeling like, oh my gosh, it's something wrong with me because I am anxious. This thing made me sad, or maybe it's taken me a long time to feel better about something.
You ever get nervous?
I feel a lot of negative energy come from that side of the room, so I want to just let the Palo Santo go over there.
That's what I do after people leave my house, a little house guest.
Man.
Do you ever get nervous as a therapist that people will take mental health and the advancements that people have been making and the strides that people have been doing, that they take it and they use it as an excuse, right? First time you hear somebody commit a crime, the first thing they say is he had a mental health problem. And a lot of times, it don't be a mental health problem. He just did some stupid ish. But I feel like
I disagree.
You do?
Slightly, only because I guess as I started to do a lot of work on myself, I see things differently. And I see sometimes I'll see a crime committed. Right, I'll see a guy.
The people fighting at Golden Corral.
I see pain there. I see some anger going on remember I said that this morning on the show.
There was no steak left. The guy wanted a piece of steak.
You got to hear the guy's voice. He said, all I wanted was some steak in the middle of the fight.
There was no steak.
So that lets me know that man,
disappointment.
Yes.
Huge, bigger than the steak.
Yes, bigger than the steak. It sounded like all my life I had to fight. Like I just came in for some comfort food and now I got fighting over steak. I heard it in his voice.
I feel like that with road rage. It's like, what is this really about? It's not about this person who doesn't know you, who's not paying attention. It has to be about being out of control or unable to control something else.
But road rage used to be people, you feel like people playing you, right? And you be like, nobody's going to play me today. They're not playing me no more. I used to be there. I'm not there no more.
So much
but I used to be there. Like, oh, you're not playing me. I got something for you. I used to be there.
Yeah. The stranger wasn't playing you, but perhaps someone did.
Correct.
Yeah.
We talked about that this week. Literally, because Bishop T.D. Jakes gave a sermon on Sunday called Road Rage. And he used that as a metaphor to describe the anger that people are holding on to, the bitterness, the resentment. And he just asked a simple question: what's making you so angry that you would react like this on this road of your life, basically?
You asked the question about the when things come up and they say it's like a mental health thing. I think partially it is, but I also think that everybody has something going on mental health wise. And it can be harmful to say that this is what mental health issues look like this huge problem is how it presents, when in actuality it presents as sometimes always being late to things, canceling things at the last minute, avoiding certain situations. There are so many things that happen every day that we ignore, and when it gets to the intensity of making the news, I think about, wow, why didn't this person have help? Like, what people in their life sort of saw this brewing? Because we'll normalize mess in a minute. You know, I grew up and we had a lot of names for mental health issues that weren't mental health terms: eccentric, funny acting. You know, they just get a little weird and all this stuff. And it's like anxious, depressed, autism. You know, these were the real terms that needed to be used, but we were using so many others that didn't push people to get the help they needed.
So when you have a situation like that, right, and somebody's mentally not in the right place, right, not in the same place, I guess you can say, right, and they do commit a crime, can they be convicted of it because they mentally weren't in a right frame of mind?
So I said I started college with criminal justice, but I don't know. I think
You know what I mean? 'Cause
I don't know. I don't know if that's like a insanity plea sort of thing.
You have a good kid, right? You have a kid, and he's a great kid, but he's, you know, maybe he has ADD, and mentally he might have problems at time, and then he acts out. But 90% of the time, he's a good kid, but he acts out. You know, when he gets older, he still might act out, and instead of just hitting a teacher or just punching a kid, it goes to a little more violent. You know, should he be convicted because he's had problems? He's not mentally right, but do you throw him in jail? You know what I mean? So I'm just curious.
I would say that most people who are in jail would benefit from mental health services. I used to be a juvenile probation officer.
Oh, wow.
And so many of the issues were like mental health issues. Most of the kids I work with had some sort of diagnosis and that sort of thing, because it does impact your behavior at times. So I don't know. I feel like everyone would get, you know, this sort of like they have these mental health issues. So I don't know what the justice system can do about that other than prevention. And prevention, not once people are jailed, but, you know, when kids of certain populations are born. Definitely, I think by 5th or 6th grade, there needs to be some intervention.
Oh, I agree. I mean, you got to go to gym, right? You have to go to gym. Why do they want you to go to gym?
You need social emotional learning.
They want you to run around. They want your heart going. They want your energy going. I feel like they should have that in school as well. Some type of therapy where they require you to talk to a therapist.
SEL. You definitely need SEL.
Maybe once a week, you know, something where they require you have to graduate. I think they do.
I want to talk about chapter 4 in your book, where you break down the 6 types of boundaries. Can you talk about those?
Yes. So before writing this book, I think a lot of things about boundaries was just saying no. Like, if you say no, that's the boundary, but really there are physical boundaries, time boundaries, sexual boundaries, emotional boundaries, material boundaries. What am I forgetting? Is that 5 or 6?
That was 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are many types of boundaries and many ways to implement them. We probably think of sexual boundaries as like really clear, but it's actually not, because it can also be how you feel about something, right? Like the presence of someone, them touching you in a certain way. Those are boundary violations. I would say out of the 6, the one that I see the most is the time violation, and it's usually us violating our time boundaries. We assume it's other people, always asking us to do stuff, always demanding our time, when really it is us not saying no, overcommitting, doing things we have no business doing. You know, I'm a therapist, not a painter. I shouldn't be helping you paint. Now, if you want to talk, call me. So just being clear about your gift set and what's not your gift set. If you want to do something for someone, do it. And if you don't, you have to say, you know, I have a lot of things going on. So I would say of those 6 boundaries, time is the one that is the biggest.
One thing I read that hit me was the things we do to avoid setting boundaries. Move away, gossip, complaints, avoidance, cut off. I do all those things. like, I do every single one of them. Why are we wired like that?
It's hard to have conversations. Like, it really is. I remember when I was a kid, before I said something hard, I would say this. Am I going to get in trouble if I say this? Mm-hmm. Because I just wanted to make sure it was safe to say it. There was no consequence. You wouldn't be mad at me. Like, all of this stuff. And we still feel that as adults. Like, I can't say this to this person because they'll be upset. And it could be, your partner. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to say, like, I'd rather go to bed early. Like, it's so hard to potentially disappoint people, to potentially hurt someone's feelings, because we do not know. I think people are placing boundaries all day, and most of the boundaries, it doesn't hurt our feelings. We're just like, okay, it's fine. But we assume that when we say it to someone, it is going to destroy the relationship. It's going to hurt them. And I would say in most cases, it does not.
What about the guilt you feel afterward for setting the boundary? That's the thing that'll bother me. Like, that bothers me the most. Like I could be somewhere and somebody asks me to do something and I'd be like, no, but then I might literally be home enjoying doing nothing. And I'm like, I could have did that for that person. But then I wouldn't have had my time to do nothing. But then I still feel bad about it. So then I'm like, hey, man, do you need me to do such and such? Like, what about that guilt afterwards?
I think guilt is a part of the boundary setting process. We can't make ourselves feel better about something we're still learning to practice. I think once you get into a rhythm of being okay with relaxing, it will be easier to set that particular boundary. I also think that as parents, is really important to think about the ways in which we are teaching our children to feel guilty. If you don't call them, they're going to be sad. If you don't do this, get them a hug, or, all of these things that we do, because we grow up and we feel that in many situations. We learn to consider everyone else except ourselves. And we feel really bad for resting. We feel really bad for not loaning people things even when we don't have it, because our understanding is people will feel so bad. So how do we, as parents, as teachers, as adults, teach children that it is okay to not always think about how others might feel and to consider yourself? It's okay to say no. These things are actually healthy, and we can raise a generation of people who feel better saying, no, I don't want to come to your thing, but continue to invite me because, next time I might.
What's a good example of a boundary for people listening right now? When you talk about setting boundaries, what's a good example of setting a boundary with somebody?
Block.
On Instagram,
phone number, everything. Block.
That is a good boundary. I hear a lot of people say,
cut
like,
off, though. That's like cut off.
It can be. What about mute? Mute is a good boundary. There are some times where people may say, my friend posts too many pictures of her cat and I'm tired of seeing her cat, or my friend is living a lifestyle that's not true on social media.
Don't you hate that? Oh my God. That's the one that really makes me be like, who are you?
They are both things. They are the person that they are on social media and the person that you know too. You can mute them. Maybe you don't want to block. Maybe you can just mute. That is a boundary. Blocking is also a boundary, especially, I'm sure for you all, when people are saying very mean things or doing things that are inappropriate, blocking is a healthy boundary because you don't want people in that space with all access.
Mentally, is it bad that I just don't fuck with many people at all? Like, I have a small core of people.
Such an angry man.
And that's all I do. So when my phone rings, I know who it is. So I don't have to mute my phone. I know it's one of, whatever people. And people say maybe I should have more friends. But I like my small group of friends. I know what they are. They know what I am. They know what I'm about. I know what they're about. And it's good. So I don't have to mute and block anybody. I just don't fuck with people.
You hear the anger?
How many friends?
How many friends?
Yeah, friends, and then friends.
I say about 5 friends. And then I would say maybe 5 others.
That's plenty.
What are others?
I think what
I have friends that are like friends. My brothers, they can come pick up my kids.
That's family.
They could come by my house. They're not, not family, but they're friends. Like the other night I had a roller skating party. As soon as I get there, I give my baby, who's like 3 months old, to my friend, and I know the baby was safe. Mm-hmm. But then I have like friends, like Charlamagne. I wouldn't say Charlamagne go pick up my kids at school, but he's a friend. You know what I mean? So I have friends, and then I have friends. You know what I mean? And I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that I just don't answer the phone. I just block them, and it is what it is.
I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I wonder, we only have so much energy and capacity. So do we need 50 people to call us?
I got 6 kids. I don't need them.
Yeah. Do we need 25? I think it depends on the
kids.
person, their lifestyle. Some of the things that we are labeling as friendships are really acquaintanceships. Mm-hmm. They are, people we know because of a circumstance. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you're a parent. It might be another parent of your child, but you wouldn't say this person is a friend. So in terms of like close friends and just friends, I don't know if we can manage having
I'll
a
keep
ton.
my little core.
Yeah, I think a small core is good.
I keep finding myself going back and set boundaries, find peace is in the Why Don't We Have Healthy Boundaries chapter, you have respecting your kids' boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
How?
What you mean? Respecting your kids' boundaries?
Because I got a 13-year-old, I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old. The 13-year-old is the one who, all of them, but really the 13-year-old, I feel like I have to micromanage her situation.
And what does she say about that?
I don't think she knows I'm doing it. Because I'm respecting the boundaries, but it's just like, I'm telling my wife, like, why is she in her room all day long? Like,
that's so
come down,
healthy
talk to the family.
To separate probably between like 12 and 14. That separation is really healthy. They're trying to figure out their identity, who they are, what they like, what they dislike. They will come back, maybe a little bit after college age, and then everything will be peachy. But it is really healthy for them to separate. For kids, they do have boundaries, and they unlearn boundaries by people telling them that they can't have any. If you think of yourself as a child, it was tons of things that you liked or disliked. Now, you may not have felt comfortable expressing those things, but what a Charlamagne we would have if you could have said, I don't want to go to this person's house, and someone would have said, well, why not? What's going on there? Mm-hmm. Lots of times we're not talking to kids, and it could just, sometimes, kids will explain stuff as a feeling. They don't have all of the language to say, well, this person, they just sit in their room. They don't really play with me. But those things are really important. Mm-hmm. It's really important to be heard, even for children, because we are raising humans. Mm-hmm. And if people aren't listening to kids, we grow up feeling as if people won't listen to us.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that, but things like you say, you have rules for a child who doesn't want to eat a particular food. But I think about like none of us liked vegetables as a kid. None of us liked anything that was actually good for us as a kid. So if we know this is good for our child, but our child's like, no, I don't want to eat it, then what do you do?
I've never heard of a child suffering from not eating broccoli. I think most kids,
forces as a kid. That's traumatizing.
Yeah, to force somebody. Yeah.
Let me force my kids.
I didn't say force.
You're repeating the pattern.
You ain't getting up on the table.
Ain't nobody ever died from not eating no broccoli.
Yeah,
so my kids, I'll be like, no, you got to eat that. Why?
But when did you start liking broccoli? At some point, you had some broccoli, and it was great. I remember as a kid, I didn't like macaroni because the top of it was hard, but I can't even remember. Now I love it.
Yeah, that's true, too.
So I think our tastes evolve. Now with kids, you do want them to eat vegetables. So maybe that's, tricking them into veggie pasta or making some cheesy thing with broccoli. But expect that they won't like everything. They don't have sophisticated palates. You can feed most kids about 5 things. So why are we forcing them to eat and do things that they really don't like?
Right.
Yeah, that is just repeating the pattern. We're probably only doing that just because it was done to us.
Yeah, I did it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
I played soccer. You gonna play soccer? Like, are you a soccer player now? Like, what is the point?
No, all my daughters they understand boundaries totally, and it's like I'm not doing it, and it's like, what do you do when you're in that situation?
I'm not eating it.
Like,
mine too. My kids do too, and it's beautiful to see, but it's like, dang. I kind of don't like you having boundaries.
And they don't. And when I say they don't listen, I'm talking about like, okay, time to go upstairs, take a bath. Like they will not move, especially my 6-year-old. She's not moving until she is good and ready. And if you ask her, why didn't you move when I told you to move? I didn't want to. It's like, what do you say?
They ain't got boundaries like that in my crib.
Mine,
Daddy said go
no.
upstairs, take a shower. We all going upstairs, take a shower.
There's
no boundaries like that.
Yeah, but there is something about being free enough to say, it's like you trust the person enough to be honest, to say like, yeah, I didn't want to. Because there are situations where kids won't say anything and they're like suffering. So to be free enough to say, I just don't want to wear this thing, or I don't want to do that. That's a beautiful thing. That is freedom. My
what
daughter.
do you say? Like when you say come take a shower, and they be like, not right now.
Well, I think that's where the parents' boundaries step in. It's like, hey, come on upstairs. That sort of thing. You they may not have that boundary, but it can still be your boundary.
That's when you telling you, be like, well, let me tell you what happened to me. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna do it to you, but let me tell you what happened to me when I was a kid and I didn't go upstairs. You see that extension cord right there?
Oh no, for real, I do that. I tell my 6-year-old that all the time. I was like, boy, you would not have survived in the 90s. You would not have.
And she probably is like, I have no concept of what
at all.
I was trying to get my daughter to eat some nuts, and she doesn't like them, and so she was like, no, I don't like them, and my friend might have said like, why? And she was like, do I have to have a reason? And I'm like, you don't.
That's real.
You do not have to have a reason.
Because you don't want to suppress that, because you know that's what they need as they get older. You want them to have that confidence. You want them to know their boundaries, what they do and they don't like when they get older. So you don't want to suppress that. Because I can think about so many things that were snatched from me as a child that I had to regain as I got older,
Yeah, I remember being forced to eat some cake because, and I'm not a dessert person. Yeah, like eat some, like a piece of chocolate or something. I'm not a, dessert person. So I was like, I don't think so, but this is the best chocolate, so I'm eating it. And how did you like it? I didn't like it. Like, it wasn't about you making it. You can be the best chocolate cake maker, pie maker. I'm just not a dessert person. So none of it would impress me. Now, if you have some Starbursts, I am wild.
Word. I love what you said, too, about adults who experienced emotional neglect as a child. You said it was never their job to do a number of things. And it made me think, because it's like, sometimes, my daughter's 13. It's like, watch your 2 younger sisters real quick while I run upstairs. And then you do feel like, yeah, that's not what she's supposed to be doing,
I think there's levels to it, right? That is very different than I'm about to go out and it's your responsibility to get these kids fed, make sure they get to bed, and take your brothers and sisters to school in the morning. Look after them while I run upstairs with you still in the house, I would say is appropriate.
Okay.
When I think of emotional neglect, I think of us not having the tools to take care of ourselves and being responsible for siblings and these sort of things. Like, you're 8 and you're watching your baby sister and you also have to figure out a meal as an 8-year-old. That is the level of emotional neglect that we see. And that is long-term damaging because it strips you of having a childhood. It's so many of us who think that our kids are childish because what they're doing is age appropriate. Like, I wasn't playing with dolls when I was 10. You didn't play with dolls when you were 3. So, it's like we have to understand that perhaps this is normal. Coloring and drawing, wanting to, not having to work, but actually wanting to maybe get a job at some point. That there are just different things that we may see in our children, and it's not for us to say, like, what's wrong with them? It's like, they're just normal. And that is what healthy, adjusted kids can do. Healthy, adjusted kids can watch their siblings for a little bit. So when you've grown up with emotional neglect, you really have to think about them being separate from you, their experiences being different. Some things, it might like, oh my gosh, am I doing something? It's like, no, this is okay and normal. And what happened for me may not have been because of all of these other things that were going on, not just because someone said, hey, watch them for 20 minutes.
We need a whole, therapy discussion on just parenting. Because, one thing I always like to say is that we're the first generation that has the luxury of healing. But I think when we say that, we think of it as individuals. But I think we don't realize we still have a lot of toxic parenting traits. We might be getting rid of our individual toxic traits, but even just parenting, because there's no rule book to it. So the only thing that you do is what you saw, So I feel like there has to be something that just helps us navigate those waters.
Some of what we experienced was good, and it should be repeated, and some of it was not. I think we repeat everything. We don't take, the good parts and do that. We take the good and the bad, and we're like, this is what happened for me. This has to happen for you. And we have to have a but why spirit. Why am I actually doing this thing with my child? Why am I repeating this behavior? One thing that can really help us that we don't do enough of is thinking about ourselves as children. Thinking about how we felt about stuff, what we thought about stuff. I can remember my first day of, 5th grade or 6th grade. You are nervous. And here we are as parents telling kids, don't be nervous. It's like, I remember being nervous. How do you support someone when they're nervous? You say things like, I understand this is a big day. Just try to breathe. You don't tell people, don't feel this. You felt that. You know how you felt when you finally started being attracted to people and, all your feelings and all that stuff. So be mindful of what you experience as your children are experiencing these things. And hopefully you'll have a level of compassion in your parenting.
No, that's really, especially when it comes to expecting kids to know. Because that's one of the things I started to unpack in therapy that I was really upset about my father about. He would discipline me for things that I didn't know, but it's like, yo, you never taught me. I was in fifth grade, sixth grade. You're mad at me and yelling at me about things that you never even taught me. Of course, I don't know how to change no damn tire. Why would I know how to change the tire? You know what I mean? Or I'm just learning how to drive. I ran the stop sign because you ran the stop sign. I think about that literally to this day. He told me to follow him. I'm following him in the car. He ran the stop sign. So I ran the stop sign. And he pulls over. I pull over. He gets out and smacks the shit out of me and tells me to wake up. I'm like, what do you mean wake up? I'm following you. So it's just we expect that. That's the one thing I definitely don't do. I don't expect my kids to know anything because they're kids.
But that could also be a test, though. He tested you. You had your license at the time?
Yes.
You got your license, and it's almost like do what you're supposed to, not what I do. Right?
I hate that.
But
it's
but children follow behavior.
Yes.
I get it.
If you don't want your kid always on their phone, guess what you have to do?
Not be on your phone.
Not be on your phone. You can say it till you blue in the face. Put your phone down. No phone at the table. Put no tablet in the car. But if they see envy doing this, they get the impression this is what you do. They are modeling behavior.
I get it.
When was the moment you realized you found peace by setting boundaries?
Every time I set one. Every single time I set one, I just feel a little bit better. Even the hard ones. It'll be like, oh my gosh, I am dreading having to say this, but as soon as I say it, it is a sigh of relief to let it out. It's still hard to say no. I say it knowing that it's a good thing. I don't know if it gets easier to say some hard things. Now, some things, I'm the queen of a no. My friends will say in a heartbeat, if you say yes, you really want to do it. I'm like, yes, because I say no quickly. I say no and then go back and say yes because I'm like, I'm strong with the no. But I don't know if it comes a point where it's like, I can just effortlessly let people down. It's like, no, like that still feels uncomfortable, but I do feel at peace once I do it because I know it's something that I have to do.
How does somebody know they need to set more boundaries?
First off, mental health issues. We have a lot of anxiety in our relationships. We have a lot of anxiety at work, a lot of anxiety within. Anxiety sometimes is because of your environment, your relationships. And that's a huge piece that we don't think about addressing. We think about, oh my gosh, we need to, do all of these therapeutic techniques, and that's wonderful. But how do you say to your mom that you don't want her opinion on your relationship? That is the part that will really help with your anxiety when, you're having those sort of issues. We have to be able to say to employers that I will not work on Saturday because it's my day off. That causes a lot of anxiety for people.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is one. Depression. The depression comes in when we start to avoid and we start to feel hopeless, like people won't even listen to us. Frustration, burnout. Often, you mentioned a part in the book where I talked about complaining. I think when I start to complain a lot about a situation or a person, it is an automatic indicator that I need some boundaries.
That's right.
Like, man, if they keep something, you need to start doing something. There is something that you're not doing in that situation. They are unaware. Often we assume people know, like your dad, people know more than they actually do. We assume that they are like in our brains and they should know automatically how we want them to present in our lives. And people don't know that. And you could have had relationships with people forever. And you just need to say what you think is silly or stupid to them that, hey, can you make sure you're here 5 minutes early so we can go ahead into the restaurant? Because if you're late, they'll give your table up. So just saying that stuff, not assuming, because what we tend to do is we'll sit there, we'll get mad. We won't even text the person and say, are you on the way? We'll just be mad when they come, and then we have a horrible lunch, and they don't even know what's happening. It's important to say even the things that you think are common sense or the things that you think people should know, because often they do not. So complaining, that's where I was going with that. Complaining, frustration, anxiety, depression, burnout. A real indicator of how you need boundaries is your feelings. When you are feeling something, really assess it and think, what can I do in this situation to potentially improve my outcome?
You got a couple more questions. You talk about this in the book too, and that's it's one of my problems is being able to listen without giving advice. So how can you decipher, whether to just listen or give advice to a friend in need?
Have you ever been upset that people aren't listening to you when you're giving advice?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, those people, you don't have to say who they are. Don't give them any more advice because they're not even listening to you. And you see the frustration that you're having. Like, they're not even listening to me. Boundary. Don't give them advice. Because when you give advice and someone listens to it, you're like, oh, okay. Like, you typically don't even have an issue with giving advice. But when you give advice and the person is constantly coming to you, you're like, oh, here they go again. Every time I tell them this, you need a boundary of perhaps this is not the person to offer advice to. That's one way to know. And then also, have they even asked you a question? Sometimes people just want to talk.
Yeah.
They just want to talk about whatever they haven't said. I have this issue. Can you help me? What do you think about this? What would you do in this situation? None of those things have been said, but we jump in and say, you know what you should do? They haven't asked. Now, we have relationships where, you just give advice back and forth and it's okay. But some of the relationships, especially the ones where you're frustrated with giving advice, stop.
What about when you feel like you're just giving emotional support? Because, they're saying something and you're like, well, I've been through that too. So don't think that, you're alone.
Emotional support is really important. It is also important to know when you don't have anything to give. Sometimes we are allowing people to vent to us and we don't have the emotional capacity to listen. When you are going through things, especially like in this pandemic, like we're all going through the pandemic. So if somebody is calling you complaining about something, it might be like, yo, like I can't take anymore. Like I tell people all the time, please don't tell me stats in the news. Like I don't want to know it. I don't need to know it. I think I've got, the general gist. Mm-hmm. It's not helpful for me to know that information. So my boundary is I prefer not to know, the stats and numbers and all of these sorts of things. I think that we have to figure out what works for us. There are some people who feel better knowing that. So what doesn't feel good to you and what does feel good to you?
What do you think got you popping? Because, you're a New York Times bestseller, you've seen you on Red Table Talk. I've introduced your book to people, and they're like, I've been up on her. You late. Like, Lauren London told me that, actually. So it's like, what do you think got you to where you are? Other than God.
We haven't seen therapists engaging. I think I'm engaging with people. I'm talking about things not in a jargony sort of way. It's very real, is what we're experiencing. And I think people are attracted to that. When you can use phrases and words to talk about anxiety in a way that everyone understands in their life. When I say things like, think of your friends who you always, you can really connect with that versus me saying, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist who helps people with, those things are helpful, but especially for people of color, we want to connect. I do have a lot of clients who will come to me and say, I saw your picture, your hair is the reason I'm coming to you.
Wow.
We want to feel like this common regard for the people that are helping us. So I think it's I have a down-to-earth approach that people appreciate.
Wow.
Well, Nedra, we appreciate you for joining us.
Absolutely. Tell them where to find you.
I am on Instagram at Nedra Tawwab, and my book is Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and it is available everywhere books are sold and in 31 languages.
I swear by your book,
Nedra
Nedra.
Tawwab. Thank you for joining us.
This and The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health by Dr. Rita Walker. Must read. And My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Minicum.
Yes.
Those three right there, that's like the path, the starter pack to healing to me when it comes to literature.
Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. You got to come back soon, too.
Please.
Thank you.
It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.